The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 88. Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and in today's episode, we are going to focus on your sales team. But first, a quick message from our sponsor. This episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show is brought to you by High Ticket Program. Did you know you're only 12 projects away from turning your six-figure practice into a thriving seven-figure enterprise? In the High Ticket Program Accelerator, we guide you through every step of growth and scale in a process we call LEAP. Imagine having a world-class project team guiding you and your team through each and every step of pain-free growth, all with the goal of becoming a seven-figure enterprise and moving away from painful, time-consuming business operations and client delivery. Get a taste of LEAP in your own business by downloading our free high-ticket program core offer Black Book that contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures for your business, including onboarding, customer service, graduation, financial management, and so much more. You can get that for free by going to the show's homepage, 6to7.show. That is 6to7.show for your free Black Book. And I am absolutely pleased to introduce today's guest, Bill Caskey. He has been in training and coaching sales teams and their leaders for over 25 years. He's written several books, including the bestseller Same Game Rules, which takes a radically new approach to business selling, B2B selling. And he also has a podcast at billcaskey.com. Bill, welcome to the show.
Frank, thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. So your focus has been primarily on B2B sales teams. What is fundamentally different about the B2B sales process than, say, B2C or kind of the non-enterprise or non-corporate sales approach?
Yeah, I don't know. I had to pick. I felt like I have to target. You can't be everything to everybody. Yeah. Obviously, you teach that. And I think we just said, you know what, we don't want boat salespeople, residential realtors. We don't want insurance necessarily unless it's business insurance. So I think I don't think they're really that different unless you have a retail store. That's obviously different. But still, you got people coming in and they want to be taken care of and they want a good customer experience. But we've just focused because we needed to focus. The B2B space is big enough. And so we've been focused on, enterprise solutions, high ticket items. Yeah. And I don't need to train people on how to sell a $200 thing. I would rather teach them how to sell a $200,000 thing.
Well, you're not going to get a lot of argument from me on
that.
No,
I'm sure. So. I'm sure not.
But there are a lot of people though who look at that enterprise sales role and are a little intimidated by it. They feel like, cracking into a corporate or an enterprise sales opportunity feels difficult. Do you think it's a different skill set? Do you think it's a different process, or is it all in their head?
No, I think it's different. I think that the bigger the company, the bigger the target, the prospect, the more patient you have to be. And I know that's not a virtue of most sales professionals or CEOs. We want it, and we want it now. I just got off the phone with one of my clients, and he's frustrated because his people. And I'm like, wait a minute. If you look at where they are today, where they are, a year from now, they're light years. Oh, I know, Bill, I know. But we all want it, and we all want it now. So right. I think, excuse me, the gift that has been given us today with LinkedIn and social platforms and multimedia and things like podcasting is that you can get to people easier today than you think you can. But if you're only relying on the telephone and you're trying to show up in their inbox and you're frustrated because they don't return the phone call, you've got to pull focus. You've got to get back and say, what are some other ways I can connect with people? And so I don't think it's as hard as people say it is, although it's still, there's a lot of decision makers and there's a lot of loose ends that have to be taken care of.
Yeah. And I think you point out something really important. That's the sales cycle. It's different. When I moved from enterprise into, working with smaller businesses, and I tell people stories about the $18 million sale that took us like a year and a half to close, and people's eyes roll in the back of their head because it's a different process. What are some of the things though that you're seeing sales teams in these B2B sales do wrong? Like what are some of the, you brought up a couple of the like lack of patience and expectation that, you know, only one channel is going to work, but are there any other sort of big mistakes you're seeing people make?
Yes. I'll give you one, because I think this big mistake leads to a lot of other issues. You know, that's what's it called? Occam's razor. You find the one thing that creates everything, all the other issues. And that is this. I think sales professionals today have a long way to go when it comes to thinking digitally. I think people think physically, and they think making a call, going to a networking event, getting a referral, all great things. But it's hard to scale your business, and you're the one I should yield to on this because you wrote the book on it. But it's hard to scale a business physically because you can only be in one place at one time. And so I'm constantly trying to get salespeople, and it's coming to post LinkedIn video, to post content, to create media, to take the top 20 questions your prospects have and do a separate video on each one of those questions where you answer it. Build your personal brand. And so I think the mistake is even the younger people get locked into this physicality of, I got to be there. And I think you have to be here. You have to be digitally. You can also be physically, but it's both. And I think I even think the younger people still struggle with that. I think when they get into an organization and the sales manager is 55, 60 years old and say, no, you got to go out and make phone calls or make calls, I think they get sucked into that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because a lot of, I totally agree with what you're saying. This idea of the digital presence of the personal brand, especially for a sales executive, a lot of times they don't think about that at all. You know, they have no problem with handing out their business card or showing up, but the idea of them building a brand around providing solutions to their clients, it's something they miss. And there aren't a lot of things where, you know, when I came from sort of Fortune 500 consulting into small business, where I was like, wow, like the small business guys have this figured out. But I will say that that even larger corporations where I worked on a lot of their sales and marketing teams, they don't even know what a funnel is. Sometimes they have no idea how to process leads. Some of the things that some smaller businesses are doing in this space are like light years ahead of where some of these larger businesses are, which is phenomenal. It's like one of the few areas where I was like, wow, these small guys have it figured out.
I've got a client who he is the VP of sales, but he also does performance and sells, and he's got 9 or 10 people that report to him. And about a year ago, I said, Scott, you need to do a podcast. You need to do a podcast where you go around town and interview target accounts, just interview them, sales leaders, VPs of HR, people like that. And he's like, I don't know. So he finally did it. And he had in 2019, he's having a blowout year. Yeah. Now, if I'm one of his people, aren't I coming to him saying, hey man, how do I get in on this? Should I create my own podcast? Can I co-host with you? And not one person has come to him and said, how can I do this too? Yeah. And it's right. So there's a case where it's right in front of everybody and people are still, I don't like my voice and I don't like myself on camera. And what if the lighting's not right? You know what? I just won't do it. Yeah. And it's like, come on, get the lighting right, get your voice right, get comfortable with it, and just go do it until, think about how many podcast episodes you've done. You might not have liked your voice 4 years ago, but now you don't care. It's not, you don't care.
Yeah, that's true. I don't care anymore. That's a good point.
The ultimate fix, don't care.
That's right. Just don't care. The interesting thing also is that, I mean, folks, especially in the B2B sales space, when they do that, they're like the only voice out there. They really have an opportunity to put themselves in a position where they are the voice of authority, frankly, because there's no other voice out there.
Totally agree. I was in Denver last week and I spoke to a group of about 70 people. A client of mine put a group together and we just had a lunch and learn kind of thing. 70 people. And these were not losers. These were winners. And I said, okay, show of hands. We were talking about stress-free prospecting. And I said, by a show of hands, excuse me, how many of you have posted a video to LinkedIn in the last 24 hours? And of course, no hands go up. I said, okay, last week, one hand goes up. Last month, same hand goes up. So of 70 people, 69 of them had not done anything in terms of posting video on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And yet, can you even turn around today online and not see some article about the importance of personal branding and creating content? No, you can't.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
there's a threshold there that's hard for people to cross. And I think it's a self-consciousness. I think it's not a time thing. It's a fear thing.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, back probably 5 years ago, when I was still trying to land banking accounts, I started a podcast called This Week in Banking. I mean, I can't think of anything more boring than that. And yet it got attention. And I will say that for sure, for me, and I'm comfortable with the medium, I definitely was, wow, no one wants to listen to a podcast on this. Yeah, for sure. There's definitely part of that. So you've mentioned LinkedIn a couple of times. So I know the listeners are sitting here going, all right, give us the skinny on how to use LinkedIn in an appropriate way. You have any good tips for the B2B salesperson on LinkedIn? Yeah,
here's the first tip. And when I asked the people in that group last week, and I get this a lot, is why? I don't know what to say. I don't have a content. And I always feel like if you've been in your business longer than 3 days, you've got content if you're talking to people. So I said, here's a tip on what your listeners can do is, if you want to do something on LinkedIn and you're not sure what to do, just write down the 10 most common questions your customers ask you or your prospects ask you somewhere in the sales cycle. What's the first question they ask you? Why should I buy from you? Okay, great. That's number one. So create a video or an article or an audio, doesn't have to be a video, but create something that answers that question. Marcus Sheridan talks a lot about that on some of his work. But it's just basically saying, what are the questions I get, and I'll share the answer that I give. And now you post all those on LinkedIn. And when a person goes to your site now, they see all the questions that they have answered by who else? You. So that's an example of, it could be a 1-minute thing. It could be a 300-word thing. It doesn't have to be, a docudrama. I mean, it could be really simple.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really good point, because I think a lot of people, when they think of content, they kind of think of something else, but not of the thing that they actually know. And that's what a really good example of, like, taking something that's already in your head. Yeah. If you're a salesperson, you're going to have to answer those questions. And what I've even seen people just do it as an interview, as a way to kind of force somebody to, like, say it out loud, because any good salesperson is going to have the answer or have something to say. That's a great one. I just gave that recommendation. It's weird you would say it last week to a client, because they were harumphing about content. I said, set up a camera, have one of your friends, colleagues, just ask you 10 questions. Yeah. And you may have to stop in the middle, or if you drop a cuss word or something, or if you just answer the question. You're right. It's a lot easier to answer a question than sit down and write something out from scratch. For sure. Yeah. Some of us who are the talkers, we like to just talk stuff rather than write. I want to pivot a little bit to talk about the work you're actually doing with sales teams, and dig into it a little bit, because I know anyone who's listening to this who is working for business improvement, or working with teams, or working in a corporate environment, can probably learn from the work that you're doing. So let's chat about it. As you go into an organization, what's usually the problem that you're solving? Is it a sales performance issue? Is it a sort of team dynamic issue? Is there a sort of one common issue that you find? Mm-hmm. Good question. Well, I'll tell you a little bit more about this later, but I wrote a little guide called "What the Hell's Going On with My Sales Team," which I hear a lot from CEOs, presidents, and VPs of sales. And so the 12 problems are what I typically hear, but it really a lot of times just gets back to, we need a higher closing percentage, or we need more revenue. I look at this, I always like to break things up into components, because I think it makes it easier to understand. And so I've got my 5 M's that I work on when I go into a company. Number one is mindset. And if you don't have that correct, the rest of it falls apart. Sure. If you believe your role is to pitch and sell and convince people to buy from you, you are dead on arrival. You've got to change your mindset to be more of a guide, more of an educator, more of a resource. Number 2 is messaging.
If your message is all about you, which 90% of sales messages are about me, let me tell you why we're great. We're awesome, we're great, we're good, and we're fantastic. Okay, well, that's not helping me as a customer. So what is your message? And is it communicated in a way the customer can say, oh, yeah, that's me. Yeah, I want to hear more about that. The third element is marketing and positioning. And how are you, not just your company, your marketing department, but how are you generating discussions with people? Is it through multimedia? Is it reach out? How is it? 4 is method. What's the method? Once a person comes into your sphere and they are interested, what's the sales process? What's the methodology you take them through? Yeah. And then the last one is mechanics. And that's where we look at all the different things, like how do I make a cold call? How do I handle resistance and objections? And how do I handle your price is too high? And it's all those languageable mechanics that I find people they really struggle with because they've never been trained.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of the 5 things that I look at. And sometimes customers, my clients, have great messaging. We don't need to work on that. Next, check. Or maybe the mindset's awesome, but the message is bad. So that's kind of my checklist of.
Yeah, that's great. So you have kind of like a pillars approach, and you kind of go through and do a quick assessment on each of those pillars, and then you can focus in, really drill into where there are pain points then.
Yeah, I want to look at where can we move the needle the quickest. There's no magic to, well, you got to start here and then you start here. That's for geometry class. But what we want to know is where can we get the most impact the quickest, which then funds the training. And then, it's easier for us to come to terms on an agreement. So, yeah. And there's always a way. I shouldn't say that, but in the 30 years I've been doing this, I don't think I've ever found a company that doesn't have some work to do in one of those areas.
Sure.
And it might not be major work, it might be minor, but even minor work can make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any of those are going to be high leverage points. You're working with essentially the sharp tip of the arrow here in an organization. Sales is kind of where it all comes together in the marketplace and the execution. And if something's going wrong in an organization, usually the sales department's hearing about it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So no question about it.
I want to focus on that first pillar, if you don't mind, for a little bit, because mindset is an area where even the solopreneurs who are selling their own stuff can really understand the pain of having this wrong. What is, what do you usually see from a salesperson's mindset kind of coming in, and where do you want to land them? And how do you make that transformation for someone?
Yeah. Well, I like the way you framed that as transformation, because I always look at there's a here and there's a there and there's a how do I get from here to there, and that's the transformation. And the here is really about how are you thinking now about your role as a sales professional, about the customer, about the value you bring. There's 4 or 5 areas that I always focus on. And it doesn't take long before I can start to piece together what's the mindset of the person. Is it a scarcity mindset? Is it one based on fear and lack? Or is it one based on abundance and plentifulness? And I have a rule, there's a spectrum of attachment. You're either attached to the sale and you need it really bad, or you're detached to the sale. And I want people to hover around the detached end, because when you're detached, you can do things and say things that you can't say when you need it really badly.
That's right.
You're shaking your head. You've been there, and we've all been there. Sometimes I gravitate like, wait a minute, why am I saying this? Oh, I know why, because I want to work with this guy or lady. So that's where I think mindset really comes in, is to piece together and say, okay, how are your people thinking? And usually there's a cultural think, and there's also the individual person who thinks.
Yeah.
A great example is when I'm talking to somebody and I do some coaching in my program. So if they have a big deal, they get access to me, and here's what I'll hear. Hey, Bill, I got this deal I'm working on, and I wanted to get some input from you. Okay, go ahead. Tell me about it. Well, we've been working with this company, and we're in a 5-month selling cycle, and man, we really need this one. So as soon as he says, I really need this, I stop listening, because the rest doesn't matter. Right. So you have gone in and you've given off the vibe of, we really need this.
Right.
Oh, no. Yes, you have. You have given up that. You don't hide that. It's like the sixth sense. You just don't hide it. So, but then sometimes when you say to people, look, when you say you need it, tell me what that's about. Oh, I see. They get it quickly if they've been exposed to the right way to think. I do think there's a right way to think and a wrong way to think. And if you tell people what the right way to think is, it's a lot easier for them to get there. If you just say, Frank, you got to think differently, man. You got to think better. Well, that's not helpful.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but just the concept of detachment is so visual, I think, for people about this.
It is.
And you can get it almost instantly. I'm trying to remember which organization did the study, but a number of years ago, an organization went through Fortune 500 companies and asked them, why did you hire the consultant that you hired? And they were looking for, academic background, knowledge, age, style, whatever. But interestingly enough, at the top of the list was, we hired the consultant because the consultant almost felt like they didn't want the work.
Really?
That was the number one thing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That came up there.
That's
was just this feeling of, I'm here I want to help, but if I can't help, I can't help you, And again, that feeling of detachment was really
Now, the one part of that is that sometimes people take that and say, oh, it's a trick. And it can't be a trick, because once it's a trick, then you will give off the vibe that it's a trick. So it has to be from your heart. Look, I might want to work with you. You might want to work with me. I don't know yet. Let's sit down and talk, and let's see if this leads us anywhere. And if it does, awesome, I'll send you a proposal. If it doesn't, I'll kiss you goodbye and we'll be gone.
Yeah.
Well, today, politically correct, you can't kiss people goodbye. But anyway, you know the point.
That's a good point. Yeah, because there are a lot of people who just memorize some phrases and spew them out, making it feel like they're untouchable or
exactly,
like the expert, and you can't, you couldn't afford me even if you wanted to, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's got to be from the heart. And I think in the service business, it should be, because you don't want to work with everybody. Not everybody's a prospect. We all know that. And so why not say it? Look, I talk to a lot of people like you. Some people are interested, some aren't. Let's see. Right. Now you're on the same side of the desk, aligned with them, and it has a different feel to it. Now we're not arm wrestling anymore, Right.
Yeah, I mean, it really is about being aligned with providing service to the prospect, right? It's like, I'm here to help. I'm not here to make things complicated. I'm not here to make your budgets worse. I'm not here to do any of that stuff. I just want to solve the problem. And if I can't solve the problem, like, I'm going to let you know. Yeah. And, because it doesn't help me to get into an engagement where I can't solve the problem at all.
Nope. So. No, but that attitude is hard. It's not out there. It's not prevalent. And so because all of our CEOs, and for you CEOs listening and VPs of sales, find a way to talk about something other than the numbers, because people get worn out on. I just had a call today with a young lady from Denver who wants to be in one of my sales group programs. And I said, what's the biggest challenge you have right now? And she said, everything is about the numbers. Now, I know why that is. Startup, SaaS company. I understand. I'm familiar with that. But CEOs and VPs of sales, it's okay to be mindful of the numbers. You have to be.
Sure.
But try to work on the inputs to the numbers. Try to work on the soul of the human being who's going to create those numbers.
Right.
And just saying, look, it's all about the numbers 17 times a day is not helpful.
No, not at all. I completely agree with you. To me, I mean, obviously you need numbers to manage things, but to me, it's a dashboard. A dashboard is essentially a one-way communication device. Like, I just get something by looking at the dashboard. I can't talk back to the dashboard.
Yeah.
It doesn't help me to talk to my dashboard. I mean, maybe I do in bad traffic, but it does not help at all to talk to the dashboard. There's other input devices into that car: the gas pedal, the brake, the radio, whatever, the temperature gauge, whatever, but it's not the dashboard. That's a really good point. You can't make it all about the numbers. You may have to manage to that, but your people need to see it be about something else.
That's exactly right. And it's not that difficult. We're not having to change our comp. Don't change your comp plan. Leave your comp plan the same. Just try to, excuse me, develop this cough here a couple of days ago. Sorry about that.
'Tis the season.
Try to look at the inputs. I always think about outputs and inputs, lagging indicators, leading indicators. So what are the things that I just had a call yesterday with a guy, and I keep talking about these calls, but he said, look, I want to grow my business 60% next year. How should I be reporting my results? Should I be looking at those weekly, daily, monthly? I said, forget about your results. What are the things that you need to be doing every week because to get the results? That's what you need to be paying attention to. The results, you just do the right behavior, the results will come. He goes, oh man, that's so freeing, because now he's not, because once a number comes up on the dashboard, like you say, what are you going to do about it? Your sales are off 20%. That happened 60 days ago, not today.
That's right. It's a lagging indicator. That only has limited information. That's great. Bill, unfortunately, we're out of time. I would love to continue this conversation because this is a lot of fun, and I love your perspective on stuff. But you've been really gracious with your time, and I really appreciate it. I know you're really busy. Before we go, though, one last question. For those of you who want to connect with you, find out more about the work that you do, or learn a bit more about the process, what's a great way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'll give you two. One is LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. I produce daily / every other day videos. Also, I think this might be an interesting guide for some of your listeners if they are sales managers, VPs of sales, or owners. It's called What the Hell is Going On with My Sales Team. Go to billcaskey.com. You might put them in the show notes. billcaskey.com /WTH. Not F, but H. billcaskey.com. And it's a 12-point checklist. It's very simple. It's very easy to read. And when you get the email, there's a couple of videos that are included, training videos as well.
Nice. We'll put both of those links. You got your LinkedIn profile, and we've got a direct link to the guide there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it, man. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for spending time with us today. Really appreciate it. It's been really enlightening for sure.
Awesome.
So,
Thanks.
and thank you so much for being with us on this episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I've been your host, Frank Bria. And just a quick reminder about the free high-ticket program Core Offer Black Book. Contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures on how to run your coaching, consulting, or expert-based service business. You can download that for free at the show's homepage, 6to7.show. That's 6to7.show for your free Black Book. We will see you on the next episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Thanks for being with us. Bye.